it was surprisingly interesting. A surprisingly interesting chapter. I agree with that. Here's an ethnographer, a multi-species. Something I can't read because I think our ethnographer is actually from Malaysia. Has a cool website too. Twitter's not his main thing. I just think for the first thing that interested me in this is that someone who is an ethnographer from Malaysia, I think most of his degrees in the United States, is then studying in Tanzania. I mean, I think that's just on the face of it interesting and super cool. And we need more of those kinds of things, I would say, in anthropology. So a little bit of an interesting backdrop. A couple of you, at least two of you, were very drawn to the same quote about curiosity. Of course, when I typed in the word curiosity, PowerPoint told me to put this cat in there. Huh? Curiosity killed the cat. That must be it, that curiosity kills the cat, but I don't have any. No, it doesn't work for this one. Well, I mean, it would, but it's really about rodents and humans who both share a penchant for satisfying their curiosity. Right, Anna? What's going on here? Don't get confused by the cat. That's just extraneous to this. That's just PowerPoint drawing on a popular saying, which apparently we do know about. Human safe traps. Oh yeah, rodents are way smarter than babies. Everybody knows that. Right, Zeke? Huh? You never stuck your finger in a trap just to see? To satisfy your curiosity? So just touch a trap. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, humans, I guess, I don't know. I don't want to say that babies are dumb, but it might be. Can't tell them what to do. Rodents are much smarter from earlier age, too. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, you have to make a trap that helps to trap the rodent using their curiosity, but doesn't hurt your child. As a result, he is not trying to claim that his traps are humane, but Autumn, what is he doing in his trap making?
They really mutilated the rats, and it wasn't like a quick kill, I guess. He was working, maybe he was working making it quick, trying to make it easy.
Oh yeah, there were some, yeah, you're right. Those were some gross scenes of the injured rats and the blood. I forgot about that. That was bad. Yeah, so he's not trying to say they're humane, but as compared to like traps that might snap and break or hurt without killing, at least you're going for the quick, and effective. And in effect, what Lee is saying is this respects the rodents. I think your full quote was, as living beings capable of experiencing pain, and in some cases of outsmarting his traps. So sometimes they can, like, they're too smart for the traps and they go around it, and he has to admit it and say, aha, can't trap them all. So he's trying to do this. Jacob, you said this was better than rodenticide. What is rodenticide and why is this?
The poisons intended for killing rodents, and it like contaminates the rodents. Sometimes I guess there's no rodents occasionally, and then it gets in the rodents. It gets in the crops as well. So it kind of opens a different perspective on dealing with the rodent problem. By not seeing it as a problem at all, it was a different kind of
Yeah, I mean, it's a debate about the safety and effectiveness. Actually, there's a lot of parallels here with the We Are Not Pests chapter, right? The experience over time, and people's like, oh no, that's completely safe, but people get worried about the rodenticides and the poisoning of themselves and the rodents and all those things. And then later on in the chapter, we see him working on one of these, reconfiguring one of these. You ever used one of these? What is this? It's actually a famous trap, apparently. It even has a name. It's called a Sherman trap. Very popular among the ecological people who trap things to do their experiments and stuff. I actually used to have something like this, and it would just zap them in, and then you go off and put them 5 miles away. Back when I was being nice, when I had a little child, said we would not kill the mouse, we would simply give the mouse a new house. So I bought one of these kinds of traps, and then I got one. We drove like 5 miles away into a park and let the mouse go. Felt really good about myself. After over a while, I was just like, nah. Actually, one time this trap didn't work very well, and it like caught it, and then it was like hurt it, and then I felt bad. So then I just got some of those snap traps, and I don't know. Fortunately, haven't had many problems with these things these days, but you never know. Winter is not coming. So he's reconstructing the Sherman, and as Lee says, this is part the idea of not necessarily killing them and letting some live, in part because some people have traps for rodents as a source of food, lead to this idea of constant negotiations. Liz, I think this was your quote. Why were you drawn to this constant negotiations idea? Of who eats, who dies, and who lives.
Bad for agriculture, others freedom, so this the traps, there's both killing and living traps, which one do you want to use, depending
Depending on where you are in this negotiation of who eats, who lives, and who dies. And then he uses this idea of food, death, which he gets from Val Plumwood, who writes, the basic feature of animal existence on planet Earth is that we are food, and that through death we nourish others. Ooh, Pretty deep, man. Actually, I looked up Val Plumwood then. Val Plumwood apparently was an Australian environmental activist, passed away, I think, in 2008. I hadn't heard of her, but apparently she coined the term critical ecofeminism. There it is again. Not ecofeminism, that was already around, but the idea of critical ecofeminism. So there's one of her books. I think she's trying to say that we shouldn't necessarily master nature, but I haven't read that. She's, I think, more famous, caught the popular imagination because she actually was going around in Australia and had a dramatic crocodile attack and was like thrown all around and somehow survived a crocodile attack. It's a pretty crazy story. I recommend Googling it. It's an interesting thing to read. And there's some museum in Australia. Zeke, that's where you want to go, right? Yeah, you should check it out. There's some museum in Australia which has the canoe that she was attacked in. the Val Plumwood canoe. This is it's kind of an international sensation. So it was also interesting because when you click on this museum, the first thing that pops up before you're able to see this canoe, it pops up and says, "We respect Australia's first peoples." And you have to like look at that for a while and then you can see the canoe. So, they're doing this. Sometimes they're doing interesting things in Australia. I'm not gonna say they're better than us, but there might be. Anyway, food death, constant negotiations. Now, one of the things he also mentions is that the people in this area would be suspicious for various reasons, as we talked about, of the idea of complete eradication of the rodents. The idea that you should get rid of the rodents. Why would this be, Anaya? Why might they be particularly suspicious of eradication ideas?
They see like no difference between rodents and black people, so they want to look at that are
Yeah, this is pretty dramatic because yeah, wow. I mean, whoa. Not so long ago, the white minority governments of Rhodesia, that's now called Zimbabwe, and South Africa used warfarin and other rodenticides as chemical weapons against black activists fighting for decolonization. Yeah, that's pretty serious. And it takes us into an author that I think would be maybe an interesting. Anybody read this book? Fairly recent. I don't know. Might be interesting to read over the summer. Being Property Once Myself is the title, by Joshua Bennett. Blackness and the End of Man, which is again connecting it to this idea of where we situate the human and the dehumanized and those kinds of issues. So in this case, this is on page 172. For Bennett, it is important that his work acknowledges Black experiences of suffering and subjection without foreclosing possibilities for poetry, imagination, and resilience. Actually, I give you both these pictures in exactly that order because as I was looking for pictures of Joshua Bennett, it's like half the pictures you see of him are super serious, and then the other half are like nice big smile. It was like perfectly reflected this sentence, I thought. You have this experiences of suffering and subjection without foreclosing possibilities for poetry, imagination, and resilience. So, good thing to look at. getting towards the end of this chapter where Lee asks Itty what his goals are, what he wants. What does he want, Tori?
He wants to get a fancy drill so that he can build more stuff. And then he wants to open the factory so that he can employ the people in the area. And he wants to get a sticker that he can put his name and number on.
That's right. First, I want a power drill. Then I'm gonna build a factory, man. And then I'm gonna get a bunch of business cards. I'll make them into stickers so everybody knows my name. They'll know that I made this stuff, even though I didn't go to school. I love this part. Because sometimes we're tempted, right, to romanticize, and we say, oh, look at this great technology they're using by hand, and isn't this wonderful, and how skilled this person is. And then you go and you ask them, well, what do you want? And I don't want to be doing this, man. I want a power drill. I want to be able to have a power drill and have a factory doing this stuff and get my name on it so I can make sure everybody knows what's going on here. And this relates to something that Lee has been talking about. Is he says that he doesn't want to use words like improvisation, or this is one of those words that comes to us via Claude Lévi-Strauss, or Claude Lévi-Strauss, the anthropologist, used it a lot. Well, bricolage, this notion of like, it's kind of like, he says in the end note, tinkering. And he says he doesn't want to use these words because it makes it sound like the people are simply kind of doing something that's an inferior copy of something else. That they're not really making anything, they're simply adapting other inventions. And he's trying to point out that that Itty has his own inventiveness, his own ingenuity, that what he's doing with these traps is a product of something that we should take seriously as a form of invention, and not simply something of tinkering around the edges kinds of things. And he relates it to the ways in which people talk about computer scientists and hacking, and you're using something that has come before, but you're hacking it into something new. He's also going back to something he mentioned at the beginning of the chapter, which I believe is also important, coming from the scholar Kenda Mutongi. Call for scholars to take seriously what ordinary Africans are making in Africa and how they are making it. And so instead of kind of seeing what is going on in various places, not just Africa, as derivative of or a copy or an inferior tinkering with technology that is produced elsewhere, taking seriously what people are actually doing on the ground and describing it in terms that are recognizable. Lee had his college class put in the cool classes section of the Haverford curriculum. I think he taught this in the spring. Critiques of the Human from Africa, which does definitely sound like a cool class. Made me want to take it. Much cooler than cultural ecology. That doesn't sound cool at all. Good thing we had a magnificent book in there, or else it would not be cool. This would be cool. Critiques of the Human from Africa. Now, I was hoping in the next chapter, it sounded like it was also be cool to me when I went looking for M.L. Clark and her journey from Canada to where she lives now in Medellin, Colombia, her adventures in science fiction writing. Better worlds theory. That sounds cool. I thought, this is going to be cool. Plus, it's short. A tower for the coming world. So I was very excited about this chapter. What do you think, Cass? It kind of made sense, and it kind of also did not. Yeah, I was kind of hoping nobody would comment on this chapter, so we could just say, All right, well, that last chapter was really interesting, but as it turns out, some people tried and thought it was interesting, or maybe it kind of made sense, but it kind of did not. What made sense? Well, you used this quote. Did this make sense?
Like that they were acknowledging the fact that the relevant doctors talk about this, but I also read a lot of people that the book about this project where text is kind of been overseas in some points. Like a philosophy chapter that some of the language that is not accessible, is not really effective, and trying to accomplish anything.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really struggling with some of these things. So I like accessible, and I did like parts of that philosophy chapter, but whoa. Let's see. Let's read this first sentence. What is trying to be said here? So we have a science fiction writer, should be interesting, but is writing about restorative justice. In the multi-species realm, though, this divide is unbridgeable with text alone. What does that mean? Yeah, you can't do it with words because you're talking about other species? Something like that. Does point the way to some other authors, though, that I thought would be also cool to read over the summer. Andy, anybody read the complete trilogy or the Binti trilogy? No? I think I'm supposed to read this. I think my daughter recommended it to me, so I gotta go find it and see if I should read it over the summer. This sounded cool. Anyway, this author says that she is a writer of African futurism and African Jujuism, two terms that she asserts as belonging to an African literary discourse that is subordinate to no other. So that sounded cool. And taking us back to 1952 and a book called Black Skin, White Mask by Franz Fanon, the author of The Wretched of the Earth. Right, Tyler? Why? Why is she taking us here? Yeah, he said something there. So we have this, we have African futurism, but this was long ago in 1952, 70 years ago. Franz Fanon warned those who would seek to define colonialism that it is utopian to try to ascertain in what ways one kind of inhuman behavior differs from another kind of inhuman behavior. You're the one who cited it, Tyler. What do you got?
I wasn't sure what you asked, but I don't know. It just made me kind of like think that like it's kind of like made up to kind of divide justice on kind of like species level and species level, because like the world has to be like basically perfect one divine justice.
It is utopian. I mean, this is a powerful statement, no doubt, to try to ascertain, to try to figure out in what ways one kind of inhuman behavior differs from another kind of inhuman behavior. Like trying to rank them or describe them. And I think this was then your sentence. It's basically what Clark is saying is that if we can't even figure out how to describe justice when it becomes to people and talking about it in our own terms, I think this might relate back to what Cass was saying. If it's so difficult to figure out what justice means just for us humans, how in the world are we going to do it when it comes to species that aren't conversing and aren't talking? So if it's hard, if it's so difficult, if we can't find a common language for justice among fellow humans, what hope do we have? So we reach the end where it all comes together, right, John? Why? On page 184, a quote that brings everything together.
I don't remember which I quoted.
It's in the middle of the second to last paragraph. Let the writer on such themes of justice,
There we go.
yeah, remember the extent to which they are always making choices. Okay, so we got a writer on themes of justice, not just to speak for others, but also to speak over others, over forms of multi-species discourse. Whoa. What does that mean?
Power of the author is such a creative tool that you can, I mean, you're literally creating something. So having the ability to give a voice to whatever envision you want. For example, justice, you also have to kind of find where that source is from, and also to realize that other people are saying their forms of justice as well. And you want to make sure that when you're writing a story of that theme in particular, you also want to not have that one perspective, if it's that one character or that one theme of justice being presented in the story, not be the only justice being presented, and occasionally let justice be handed over, even if it just makes it more like a genuine connection, makes it like I don't know if I'm speaking right or speak, but you just make it more connected with how complex justice is to people, rather than just having a one fanatic theme of justice. Because people complain sometimes about how certain themes of justice is handled. Oh, does the hero have his own justice? Well, what about the villain? It's more about like letting the justice feed in its complexity alone, rather than just defining it into a narrow descriptive of what the story wants you to believe justice is. It's rather show that it's basically what I got out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think the idea that you're always making choices anytime you're writing to speak for others and over others. And then Clark says, any pursuit of multi-species justice that elides the existence of this gap. So any time you're trying to pursue justice without acknowledging these difficulties is at risk of becoming colonization by some newer, more self-serving name. I guess it is. That's back to our warning from Fanon, I guess. Anytime you're trying to do justice without acknowledging these possibilities, this gap, you are at risk of becoming colonization by some newer, more self-serving name. Huh. Well, that's a good warning. That's a good lead-in into nuclear waste and relational accountability in Indian country, chapter 9, I think, because we have possible colonization by another name there, multiple forms. I thought this next chapter was strangely interesting. I hope you enjoy it too, between now and Thursday. Have fun out there.